Welcome back to Some Parts Not Included, a podcast where three lifelong amputee friends hang out and talk about all things amputee related. My name is Amanda Marie. I'm a right leg amputee, and these are my co-hosts, the Jamies.
Hello, I am Jamie number 1. That means I am first. And I am a right arm amputee.
And hello, I am Jamie number 2, and I am a left arm congenital amputee.
So today we're going to talk about transportation, how we get around without our limbs. So 2 of us here drive, and 1 of us does not.
Guess who?
But, yeah, take a guess. 3, 2, 1. I drive.
I also drive.
I personally don't currently use any adaptive devices, but when I first started to learn how to drive, I did attempt to use one. It was a foot pedal, basically, that was an extender. This might be mirrored backwards because I always feel like I point one direction and then it mirrors it to the audience after. So if I'm doing it backwards, that's why. But basically you have like your gas pedal and your brake pedal, and the device would put a piece of metal on top of the gas pedal that you can't push down on, and it's affixed to the floor of my car, and then whoop back up. So it would actually extend the gas pedal to another pedal over here. So it kind of makes a third pedal. So therefore, I'm actually pushing left pedal, that's my gas pedal, and then the right pedal is in the same place, but that's the brake. So the reason for that being because I'm missing my right leg, I have to cross my left leg all the way over, which can be very uncomfortable when you're driving for long periods of times. It does throw your body out of alignment, become tiresome. So I did start off using it both ways. Reason being, I thought I could get it, give it a try. And then after a while, like I didn't want to take my tests and have restrictions on my license because I didn't want it to be, I wanted to be able to drive somebody else's car and it not just be that car and have those limitations. And there wasn't a real reason why I couldn't drive just normally. So eventually I did decide not to drive with it because I noticed my brain would start to kind of get confused, like, oh, is left brake or is left gas? And realistically, it had never been a problem, but I would notice my foot sometimes would go to where like the third pedal would be if the extender was there. And so the first time that ever happened, I didn't like it. And I immediately removed and then just went to with no extender pedal. So
you use your left foot and you reach it across to the pedal?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my legs are very short, so it's quite a reach for them. But I don't know if there's any other adaptive devices specifically for leg amputees, but I will, if I can find on the internet, I'll do the Googling and see if I can throw up a picture for our viewers so they have a better thing than just like me moving my hands around really awkwardly.
It's called a left foot accelerator.
Thank you.
People look it up.
There you go.
So if you're missing your right leg, which is what you would use to accelerate and brake, just moves it to your left, the gas to your left foot.
And there's really no adaptation I think that people need. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're missing your left leg, it doesn't really affect your driving so much as far as legs go. I do not drive stick because I do not have a hip joint, and therefore I don't feel comfortable using my right leg at all. I don't have great control or movement, so it's not safe for reactions. So therefore, like driving a stick is just a dream of mine and never a reality.
Kind of the same for me. But
I know there's like, you could get, there is an adaptation for that, I'm pretty sure. but they're like
There
hand
is.
control things. So then I
Mhm.
could drive stick, but it's like me just as if I'm like remote control or on a game.
Not only could you not only could you drive stick, but you could get hand controls for acceleration, I do believe as well. If you're
Oh,
missing your legs completely, you could fully function your car with hand controls.
yep, there you go. I,
Yep.
I knew there was something else that was missing.
Hmm.
Technology can do lots of amazing things and a lot of fun.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And also, I don't think that there's any limitations truly here because if you have a will, everything is you can build it basically in this scenario to adapt it if you really have the desire to. James, do you drive with any or ever attempted to drive with any adaptive devices?
I do not, and I have not. Um, I just learned to drive with my, um, I guess, my prosthetic hand. Really, it's just using my one hand kind of firmly. Like even in my driving test, I told them like, I have one arm, so I don't do 10 and 2 particularly. I use my sound limb or my right arm to sort of turn the wheel, and then I told them like I don't do hand over hand either. Obviously, I would palm it or whatever, and so they were okay with that. I guess it really depends on your driving test, but I was a decent enough driver to get my license. So, and then after that, I just really started using for the first while, I used a passive hand. So that's a passive hand is just a static hand that doesn't move. It just stays like this, obviously. And so I would just kind of stick it on the wheel between the thumb and the finger, and it would sort of guide me a little bit. It's just like an extra kind of hand on the wheel. But nowadays, I use a myoelectric arm when I drive mostly, and I personally think it's amazing, but here's a disclaimer is that according to the company, you are not supposed to close the hand completely on the wheel. And the reason for that is because if you ever have an instance where you can't get the hand back open, which happens if the battery dies or the hand just doesn't work, you got a hand that's stuck on the wheel and it can cause you to have an accident. So for me, I always make sure I have a battery that's topped up. But I did have an instance where I've had it happen twice now, where I've had my wheel or I've had my electric hand close on the wheel once when I had no battery, and then another time when I just had my electric hand that just was not working well and needed repairs, and so it was constantly just not working. So in those instances, I pull out of my socket. So if my arms are on, if my electric hand's on the wheel, I have a dead battery right now actually, so I can't even open and close it. So say it did die on the wheel like this, then you can't get it off. What I do is I pull my arm out of the socket, and then I just push my arm like this down to the center of the wheel, so it's out of the way. So you can turn the wheel. The arm's just stuck on the wheel, and I had to do that once. It's really weird and it's really awkward,
And
but
then
at
he
least
grabs the artificial arm and then uses that and holds hands with themselves and
just turn it
drives.
like this. No, I had that happen
Like
once,
a
and
baton. Like me.
yeah, pretty much. So I mean, it's better than not being able to turn. One time, it did die in the wheel mid-turn. I was turning just in a slow area, like a 50, and I was making a turn. Well, you're not turning super fast anyway, but it's a 90-degree angle turn. And I realized halfway through the turn, my arm was dead, and it got stuck and caused me to veer off almost out of the turning lane. So I had to act really quick and pull my stump out of the arm and turn it.
James is just giving like feeding his insurance company information on why
Can we cut that out? Wait, cut that. I already, I
so many
already pay enough on insurance with
so
having
many
a
cuts for
truck.
James. No, but James is excellent at driving when
I'm an
his
excellent driver. That never happens. I always have a fresh battery and a fresh myoelectric
he's
hand.
never been in a car accident. I don't know if that's
Knock on wood.
true. Yeah.
A couple
What
fender
is
benders, but nothing crazy. Um,
we'll cut that too. Cut that
yeah,
too.
cut that. Yeah, actually, just cut that whole section.
Let's cut the whole
Uh,
episode.
No, but what was I going to say? Oh, so the recommendation is if you do have a My Electric hand and you want to drive with it, it's fine. Make sure that you turn the battery off and leave it open. That's how you do it. It can rest on the wheel. That's fine. So you can always pull it
Is
off
it
no matter what, but you're supposed to turn it off with enough space that it goes over the wheel and off the wheel without any resistance.
so you're
So
using it
that's
like a passive?
it, pretty much. Yeah, you're just turning the battery off so it can't open or close, and you give yourself enough room. So really, you're just able to rest it on the wheel, and it does help guide you when you need it. But really, you just use your one hand. And um, when it comes to driving like standard, it's not that I can't. I can. I have. I choose not to because it's sort of more of a pain in the butt. I feel like it's more. There's just a little bit more of a chance I might get into an accident. Like I might not be able to react or not react. That's not the right word. Um, just might not be able to, shift the gears as fast as I need to, or for whatever reason. Like, so when I'm in the car, if my electric is on the wheel, I'd have to take my sound limb off the wheel and do the shifting all the time, right? So it's like, it's not ideal. If I, my dad actually has a stick shift in his Camaro, and so, but I've never actually learned to drive on it. I kind of want to, but I'm almost a little afraid to because it's a very fast car, and it's like it's just, if you're not used to stick shifting and stuff, it's just like a accident waiting to happen. It's just like it's like a
I also
danger
feel like you're an accident waiting to happen as well. So it's just not
sometimes.
a great combination.
Stay off the roads if I'm out there. But I got a truck now, so I'll just
Run
run
into you
run you over. Yeah. No,
again. His insurance company just
no. I'm a safe driver. I'm a good
Cut it.
safe driver.
No.
Ask anybody.
Cut it.
not
Ask
sure I'd get in
Jamie.
the car with you, but
He's driven with me many times. You've never been nervous once.
Never. Not once.
Hey
that
man,
should
I
be
have
fun.
friends who are amputees that I've driven with. I'm not going to name any names, but I was really holding on to that holy S handle the whole time. Like, my God. And if he's watching, you know who you are, you crazy person. He's better now. But back in the day, oh my God.
So,
Crazy guy.
Jamie, you don't drive.
Correct. I do not. And it's not because I'm an amputee. It is because I'm very afraid in a vehicle. But I actually
Except when she's
but
driving with me.
but I actually did have the first part of my license for a little while. And when I got it, it was no problem. It was just that written test, and I was, like practicing or whatever. I was coming up to the 5 year mark where I was going to have to do my driving test. But again, I was still pretty scared in a vehicle. But at that point, I received a letter, and I live in Ontario, so the Ministry of Transportation in Ontario sent a letter that said, and I quote, "Someone has reported you as having a musculoskeletal condition, and you need to get a letter from your doctor saying that it is okay for you to drive." This
Really?
I had had my license, people, for 5 years at this point. Number one, I'm not even driving. Who the reported me? Sorry, shouldn't be saying that. Who
Bleep that.
reported me? You can beat me out. I don't care. Anyway, and also, like, 5 years? 5 years. 5 years, really. After 5 years.
I'm
It's
assuming, like, was it just somebody who didn't know you and took your license plate and made the assumption, or
Here's
you have no idea?
here's the thing. Number one, I have no idea. Number two, I wasn't even driving. I'm too afraid to drive. Like
Did
the
that
most I did was extremely back roads from the area that I lived in at that time, and no one was around. No one was like it wasn't just back roads, it was back roads of back roads. Like, like middle of
yeah,
nowhere back roads. So it's like no one was around
how
at that point.
how do you feel that affected you?
It really discourages me, number one, and number two, it's discrimination. If I have already proven, number one, that I can, and if at this point I haven't even done my like driving test, like done the driven part of my test, that is the point in which you can say, I am not comfortable with her, blah, 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 behind whatever. But I was, driving with someone who was experienced because that's the rules. Those are the rules. And so I feel very discriminated against because this does
Was it your driving instructor or the test you did? Did you disclose your amputation at all?
no.
Hmm. That's so weird. How would they know then?
Just like out of
This
nowhere.
is this is what my point is, right? Is how
Yeah.
in the heck did they know? And who was it that said something? It just none of this makes sense to me. And I'm
Yeah.
confused and angry.
No kidding.
And to add to that, I called the Ministry of Transportation and I was like, what does it mean someone reported me? And they're like, well, we don't know where it came from. Like, bull crap. That's crap.
They just decided to keep it anonymous for them.
That's crap.
Person saw you taking the test and was like,
Mm-hmm.
I
And
have to report her.
well, that's the thing. Is like no one saw me taking the. This was 5 years
Yeah.
later. Five
Yeah, I know.
years,
That's
James.
I guess that's just how long it took for them to get to the paperwork.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. That's just government.
uh,
That's weird, though. That is weird. I've
is,
never had that happen. I've been driving for
this is what I'm saying
a
is
long
that
time.
so many people never have that happen. And like even so many amputees never have that happen. And I was going through so many things at that time in my life that I decided that it was not best to fight this right now. I made the call at that time. That was all I could do. And then
Did
throughout
you get
the
the
time,
doctor to sign the note then?
yes, I'm getting there, James. Throughout the time that
I'm dying to know.
throughout the time that that I was going through the 1 million other things in my life right after this happened, my license ended up expiring. And so I spoke to the MTO at the time and I was like, well, let me just go write the original test again and then get the license. And then they said to me, this is on your file and it would continue to be on your file if you got the license again. And it's like, what the actual hell? If I'm proving and I'm going to reprove, because I'm not even driving by myself at this point. Like it's the whole process again, Why in the heck does that matter?
I feel like I'm so stumped. Like
It doesn't anyway. So after
yeah.
all of this happened, I had to go and get that paper signed to begin with. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to give them what they really want. I'm going to have my physiatrist sign this dang paper. The doctor who deals with my amputation, I'm going to have them sign this paper as an in your face, shut up type of situation. And so I did. And my physiatrist is like, this is weird. Okay, like I'll sign it, whatever.
But what did they describe it as? And not even an amputation.
A musculoskeletal condition.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
weird, eh?
It is honestly, I'm so speechless with the MTO at this point.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's a good point to make though, because there's a lot of amputees that have, depending on their province, in Canada at least, that I know of, that have to jump through some hoops to get their license. They might have restrictions. They might have. I never did. I just went and did my test, and no one really questioned it. Thank God. Sometimes you have to get an adaptation or whatever. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, and this is my point here is that I didn't even have a chance to prove myself. Everyone
No.
gets a chance to prove themselves. Everyone gets a chance to be like, no, I can drive. I didn't
Yeah.
even get that chance before they were
Hmm.
like, wait a second. Because that's
I'm
what that test is all about. That's what that test is about for everyone.
yeah.
Not just me, everyone. For everyone, they're like, okay, well, this person can either drive safely or can't drive safely, no matter what is in it. So they could have, some sort of different things in their lives which cause them to, have reaction issues or whatever is the case. Whatever is the case, right? And everyone gets that chance, except I didn't. I had to do the doctor thing first. And it's fine. Like, I got it done, and it's not a huge deal because my doctor's like, what the heck is this? I'll sign it, whatever. That's so weird. But the point is like, I just wasn't given the same courtesy as everyone else. And
Yeah.
that is when you feel so frustrated with the system. At that moment when it's like, wow, I feel called out now. It's like the situation is completely different for me than it is for everyone else just because I'm missing my arm.
Yeah, and I
And
had the
that
same
is
amputation as
discrimination
you.
at its core. Sorry?
I had the same amputation as you, and I didn't get that, right?
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. Like, that is discrimination at its core. It was one person somewhere at some point, one person who was like, ooh, I don't like this.
Hmm.
Discrimination. Anyway.
And
I've known other amputees that haven't been able to write their G2 test until they have had they're getting kind of the similar treatment to you where they've written their test and then, I mean, it does happen to other people, right? They've written their test and then they disclose their amputation, whether it's high up or below elbow, like above elbow, below. And then they've had to have, like I was saying earlier, restrictions, like a spinner knob, or they had to have some sort of adaptation on their
But this is
license.
my
So
point, James, is that at that point, they would have already had the chance to prove themselves. And then at that point, they would have said, oh, wait, you now have to have an adaptation. I didn't even get that chance.
yeah, that's weird.
And again, like, yes, you're right, this happens to a lot of others, and I'm sure it's happened to other amputees before where they've got this weird letter in the mail and it's like blah blah blah, it's musculoskeletal condition, it's fine, whatever. But um again, in my opinion, that's one person looking at this and being like, wait a second, I don't like it, and that's discrimination, and that's frustrating as all heck. And if you've not been discriminated against, oh, it fires you up. It fires you up, let me tell you.
there's
I see
there's
that.
so many layers to this. First of all, oh my god, your feelings are super valid. Like I didn't have any of those obstacles. I was very determined to get my license and everything very immediately. Like I was like to the day getting everything done. And I did not have those obstacles at all. And I knew that it was possible, though. I had heard stories of challenges coming up and kind of how to address them and respond to them. So I felt prepared in that sense. But that is my brain. I'm sorry, my brain's actually trying to wrap around how crazy this is because it's like one random person or maybe not random person made a comment, but like the wasted effort on everybody's behalf to get to where it got to is like if I like what was the letter or what was received to make them actually like make the government
Yeah.
action that or the MTO whatever whoever's in charge. I'm not educated on that. But to educate or to action it and send something to you for you to do a follow up without determining if it was actually even necessary or not.
Mm-hmm. And
There's so much more.
like, this also makes me think, right? Like, we dream, we all dream of the day that government departments can speak to one another and give information to one another without us having to give permission or say the information over and over again. But I start to think a little bit, And I start to think, did I use my license as part of an ID for a government medical system? Did I use that?
Oh,
And
oh,
then so, you know, like then I start to question my choices there. Did I do that? I don't know. Can they do that?
right.
I don't know. You know, and then
Also,
would Ontario Health have reported me? I also don't know. Right?
but
So
that's not what you have, though.
I
Or
It's a weird way to describe it. It's a weird like
or is that what they would classify
I
you
think
in
that that's
one
what they,
sense?
yeah, because it's congenital, they wouldn't call it an amputation.
yeah.
Right. So they
So
would call it that?
I have no idea.
That's
This
a
is the thing,
that's a
right? Is
head
like
scratcher, Jamie. That's a head
it
scratcher.
is.
I
And
actually do think that's more likely than just somebody saw you several years before
Yeah.
driving down a dirt road and was like, "I'm gonna make a complaint." Like, it does seem it's more logical it took that route, but
but
yeah,
again, is that
also
fair?
no, definitely not.
Should
It would've
should the government departments be speaking to one another about these types of things? Did I give permission to Ontario Health to talk to Ministry of Transportation?
these are you
Good
Anyway,
have
questions.
opened my mind on a level
They may
where
have.
I'm speechless because I have more questions than I even have anything. I have no answers. I only have more questions to
anyway,
add
this
to,
is it's been a very interesting journey
for sure.
to go through that and to like to get that letter and all that kind of thing. And as you guys know, like I have other health issues that would be probably maybe a little bit more concerning than my arm. Come on now. But yeah, so it's just in my opinion anyway, that would be more concerning, even though more people suffer from the other health condition that I have than amputation, and no one has to deal with that.
For
So
sure.
I
Yeah,
feel like it changes from literally within Ontario, it changes from center to center where you go. Like some centers will want you to get it cleared through the government if you're able to drive. Some will just give you your license if you're a good driver.
anyway, I'm getting it again. I'm going through the process again. Um,
are
because I do need to face my fear and just get this done. But yeah, but it's
you
not.
are
I'm trying.
okay. I understand driving fear. Like after I never had driving fear until one of my friends passed away in a car accident. And then I started to get driving anxiety, and then I got in 2 car accidents, and now I have major driving anxiety. But my mother said to me the day after my really bad accident, she's like, "You need to get" we went to go test drive a new car. And I told her, I'm like, "You can test drive them and I'll just be the passenger." She was like, "No, if you don't get behind the vehicle right now and start driving in, you will not do it." She knew how scared I was and how traumatized I was from it. So she would be with me and then she would validate as I was driving, like, "Yep, you know what you're doing. You're doing great. You're a great driver," just to help me out through those stages. So I get it. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't even be driving as much. But the truth is, as a leg amputee, driving is very important. It gives me a lot of independence. Um, so walking around isn't as much as a option for me. So it definitely is something I take pretty seriously, and so I can relate to you need to get through those. It's really uncomfortable though, and I worked with an occupational therapist as well to get through, like, turning left at a stop sign and
I
stuff like that all
yeah,
over again.
and I was in a pretty bad accident at one point too. And even after that, I wouldn't even like ride in the front seat for weeks. So I think that that just adds a little bit more to it, and the fact that I also grew up in the middle of nowhere. Really, I did. So you know, the likelihood of me running into people
Yeah,
on the back roads of my hometown were very, very small, and I got used to that lifestyle. And also, you know, I grew up driving in the fields where the things I would run into are cows who wouldn't get out of the way, not necessarily, not necessarily other cars, you know. so that we're
Yeah.
unpredictable. So yeah, I will get over it. I am trying. But yeah, it's been a journey and a weird situation. If any of you are the ones who reported me, I'm coming for you.
Jamie, I'm so proud of you for working through this, because not only is it just a physical fear of like anxiety, which is not really physical fear. Again, PhD over here, I know what I'm talking about. My point is, it's not just one thing you're getting over, but you're also truly addressing how you felt when that person made you have to go through those steps, like what happened to you in your past. Like, you're not just addressing one thing here, so I'm very proud of you for
Thank
it,
you.
and
Thank you.
we're here for you as you go through those uncomfortable stages. And I know you'll be able to do it. And what have you been doing up until now to get around and
So
transportate
yeah,
yourself?
so I use my good old legs, my leggies, and I also have been using a bus and rideshare. Just a lot of rideshare. Very expensive.
Yeah.
Good thing I make more money now. So I've been using just all of that kind of stuff for the most part. Yeah. And that situation is, as we've spoken about before, like that situation is fine. It's not perfect. It's not great to ride the bus. It's not great to spend an entire, paycheck on your rideshare. And walking is, I actually don't mind walking at all. I enjoy walking quite a bit, um but yeah, so it would be nicer to have a little bit more freedom, especially because I don't live close to my family, and my family doesn't
Which,
have
yeah,
any public um, you know transportation services um, close to them at all. So I can't get there if unless I say, hey, come pick me up. At 2 hours from here or an hour from wherever they are. So yeah, so I hope to get a little bit more freedom, and we'll see how it works out. But yeah,
which is also another good point to bring up, is that it affects where we choose to reside in or work in.
absolutely.
That how easy it is. I know once upon a time I lived out in the country, and that wasn't for me. It was very difficult as an amputee to deal with the snow. Just, yeah, getting anywhere was just a lot of snow, a lot of drifting. I was just not built for the country in general. But
Which is actually like
that's
I have another note about that too, is that I recently discovered that those with a disability, especially those with the disability tax credit, you can receive the home buyer's amount, the first time home buyer's amount on
yes.
every single home you buy, not just the first time,
Oh,
because we're simply amputees, especially if it's like it says, if you buy a property that's specifically because of your disability.
yeah.
So just a note to all of you that if you're buying a home because of your disability, that has something very specific because of your disability, then to take a look at that tax credit, which is amazing.
That's an
That's
amazing,
a great
very
note.
helpful tip. Yeah, for sure. Thank
I
you.
didn't even know that.
Just recently, yeah, recently went through it. So I just recently discovered that.
Yay. Yeah. Got to experience this for herself.
Absolutely.
Does it, do you feel being an amputee affects you by any means in any other form of transportation, or how you get around, or do like day to day things?
um in at the airport, going through security, so I do like to travel quite a bit, and so going through security, if I'm wearing my artificial arm, every time I'm stopped, every single time, unless I choose to take it off. I also have other things that set off the alarms that I can't take off, so I just leave it on, and generally that's just got to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
You're gonna
that's
have to get scanned.
That's one of them. I also almost always check baggage because I don't want to carry things through the airport. Yes, it means that I possibly might have baggage lost, that which is super frustrating. But for me, carrying something can get very, very tiring very quickly. So I choose not to carry things through airports too much.
Yes,
Makes sense.
that's a good tip.
Hmm.
Check
And
your bags.
I also use a backpack purse. I think we talked about this before too. So just even when I'm commuting on the bus or whatever, I carry all the things that I need on my back rather than on my shoulder.
Yep. I didn't even think about airport transport or transport through airports and stuff. Like that's a whole other pickle for amputees, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
going through security, and like what about like going through security in other countries too? Like you think Canada, obviously I've flown mostly domestic and inside of Canada and stuff, but there were a few instances like in Cuba, I think they really wanted to scan my arm and look at it like in depth, like put it through the machine, and then they were inspecting it and they're like, can you take it apart? And I'm like, well, no, I can take the hand off, I guess, just because they think you're like smuggling contraband or something inside of it or whatever. Like it's, but yeah, there's been, it depends on the country you go through, but even in Canada, I've had some instances where it's like they've really been adamant about checking the arm and putting it through the scanner and taking me aside. And so usually now I do my best to just take it off. So I just put it through the machine, put it in the bin, which is a hilarious thing because it always is like really funny to watch everyone's reactions in the lineup behind you when you take your limb off and put it in the bin. I always get a real kick out of that because it's usually I'd be wearing long sleeves or whatever, like unless it's summer, I guess. But so no one really can even tell I'm an amputee. And then I get there and just pop it off and put the arm in the bin and turn
Bob's
behind
your
me and
uncle.
yeah, look at the funny reactions from everybody. They're like they look you turn around to see if people like notice and everyone's just like, oh what, yeah, they look away like, oh yeah, I wasn't looking. But it's way better than beeping every time and like explaining it and getting scanned. You
I
know, the
don't have
worst
a
is when you
choice. So
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
know.
was like, I just get. I've
But
only
that's
gone once,
just gonna say
so
that's the it's the worst when you put your arm in the bin and then something else beeps anyway. It's just like, oh well,
so
I gotta
I've
get
only
scanned anyway.
been on a plane once, I believe, to my recollection. And also, I was not even thinking about it at the time, but I was wearing overalls. And then I had a jacket like zipped up over my overalls. And so I was just setting that thing off. Like it was beeping everywhere. And the person just looks at me, they're like, you're wearing overalls, aren't you? Yes, yeah. But I let them know in advance, like I am a leg amputee, so I'm gonna set the thing off. But I was not thinking about the overalls underneath of my jacket. So it fun times. I think that was the only time I've ever been on a plane, so I don't really have too much to contribute as far as that goes. I will say, in addition, though, as far as like transporting my body around, one thing that I didn't really consider before that one of our viewers even pointed out to us that you would not have the challenge of is how do I get around if my artificial leg is broken or off in repairs, whatnot. In that case scenario, there's a few different things. Normally, I'll be honest, I kind of just walk around as little as possible with the broken limb until we can get it fixed, is usually what I do. That's not the best case
danger,
scenario or what
danger.
you're supposed to do, but it's usually what I do. I'm just being authentic. The best case scenario would be we would have a backup limb, such as a recreational device, a swim leg, something like that. We don't use every single day that we could wear just temporarily until we get our everyday limb fixed. That is what ideally we are going for. And then other backup options would be to use crutches or a wheelchair. Truthfully, I don't know where the seat of my wheelchair is. It's somewhere in storage. So I know where the wheelchair is, not the seat. No way is it comfortable enough to just sit on that. So I haven't used it in a very long time. I actually kind of
Sounds like it.
as bad as this sounds, but in my head, I thought the more this thing can collect dust, the better. Because then in my head, it meant that I was still capable of doing things and I didn't have limitations, and that I was strong and my body was capable of doing it just with the leg. So for me, that's what it really represented until I needed to have surgery. And then I was like, oh crap, I can't find my seat. So anyways, luckily I was able to get some coverage and get a secondary device in that kind of scenario. Ideally, I don't use crutches because I injured my rotator cuff in my car accident. So prior to that, crutches would have been a great option for getting around because I have a lot of upper body strength, but damaging that rotator cuff really made it challenging, and it's kind of a setback because every time I use my crutches, I'm really damaging the other thing. Um, when I was younger, I used to hop all over the place. I truly would just take my artificial leg off, drop it on the front lawn of my friend's house, and then just go carry about, hopping around everywhere. As we know, that is awful to do, though. And now, as a 37-year-old lady, I regret it. Whatever cartilage is now left in my knee joint, I actually try to protect it. So I try my best to never hop ever or do skipping anything that's like a hard impact. I can already hear my knee grinding. So,
A lesson for all you leg
yes.
amputees out there.
Yeah, it was when I was younger, it was always like, "Oh, it's just easier to hop 5 steps to get from point A to point B," right? But now I try to never hop at all, and if anything, I just kinda drop my leg beside me, and then I put it on, just to get walkabout and do my thing and then throw it off again. That I think probably covers like the different ways that I would get around if something were to happen with my limb. I think there's probably other devices. I have seen some online that people have chosen to use where it's almost like a platform that they can like rest their stump on and walk kind of like a pirate, like a more modern, comfortable pirate
Peg
Yeah.
leg
leg?
device.
Yeah, I've seen
Crutch?
those. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen those.
Is it
I
like a
did
knee
not
brace
know.
with a thing?
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah. I
post
think
coming out
so.
of it?
Like a pirate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like a modernized fire. It's not wood, so it's a little bit more comfortable. I don't know how much. I've never used it. I have just seen other people online. I think Footloose Joe uses it. I've seen her on her channel. I follow her online. She has great content. If you haven't seen her, go check her out. But she has a lot of other kind of devices that she uses that because she became an amputee later, we also make different adjustments. Whereas I was just kind of used to it and we might load bear differently as well. Aside from that, getting around, there are other options I could use to help, such as use crutches, which would help my gait. Let's say and make it so I walk straighter and I don't walk as much with a limp. Therefore, it would make it easier on my back. But I'm a very stubborn human being, so I choose not to use crutches or any gait aids. As I get older, I do understand that they might have to come into play or a walker. Something I do use though, just as a tip, when I go to a big place like a grocery store or anything that's very large, if they have a grocery cart, whether I need it or not, I grab it because it just makes it, I just can go walk so much further without being in pain or I can walk faster. And often people will be like, "Are you getting that much?" I'm like, "I'm not even getting anything. I just," it acts almost like a walker, right?
Yeah.
To brace
It's funny
myself on.
because it's funny because I've actually offered to push your cart before and you'd be like, "No, no, no, no."
I love that you bring that up. I go grocery shopping with my dad, and he all the time he will say, "I feel like the rudest man, and I'm not being a gentleman because you won't let me push the cart." And he's always trying to take the cart, and people try to do as being polite, and I'm like, "Actually, I need it. It's not that at all. It's actually helping me." So, if anybody's watching, it's because I asked to push the cart. I These people aren't being inconsiderate. They actually feel like jerks walking around with me and I don't let them.
Yep.
So, oh, too funny.
If I were you, I would just get one of those really sweet scooters eventually. like the electric scooters.
I don't like them.
You don't want to do it until you absolutely have to, because you want to keep walking and active as long as possible.
I'm not great at driving them.
Oh, I have 2 legs and I want one.
It
So
is so inconvenient for me. Truth be told, when I'm recovering from surgery, they are often there, and I will use them in a situation like that if I'm not able to walk the distance that I normally can, or I'm working up to that. I don't I don't like them for multiple reasons. One, they're very large. And so when you're trying to get around and like turn and go down aisles or do things, it gets in the way, or I knock things over. Like the displays I have knocked over from trying to, and then it brings more attention to me, and I don't like
yeah,
that.
that
And then
reminds me
they
of like a
also they make all these beeping noises. So every time you do like anything, it's like meep meep meep. Like it's
it's like
just
look at me.
yeah yeah.
My
Look
when
at
my
me.
mom when my mom was sick, she actually would use the ones in the store all the time. And the amount of time that those things have run out of battery when she's like middle of like, as an example, like, okay,
Wow.
middle of Walmart or like middle of Costco, like how is this helping anyone if it runs out of battery? Like in the middle of this, like so many aisles, you're so far from the front. Like how in the heck is that even helpful?
So you either have to be with somebody or wait till someone kind enough or an employee that's helpful comes by, and then you're just stranded in the
Call
middle
for
of an
help.
aisle. Help!
It's got a help button on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my pet
Oh my
peeve about those store ones.
yeah, I'm not saying I haven't used them if they really come into like I've needed to use them, but I strive to be strong enough for as long as possible to be able to just carry my own body and use as little aids as necessary, unless it's making me in more pain, because sometimes that's just a factual statement. But yeah, those things are they're like embarrassing. That's I don't know another way. Just that there's so much of like look at me attention that they're asking for and making it more complicated, that I feel like just getting up and stranding it. It's like the middle of the aisle and be like, not my problem. Just go get a cart now.
Yeah.
Too funny. All right, well, I think that's a wrap on today's episode. If you have any questions for us, toss them down in the comments below. We'll try to address them in our upcoming show. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure you hit the like button, as well as subscribe to our channel and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And you can find us on all social media at Some Parts Not Included. And until next time, be kind to one another. Bye.
Bye.
Peace out.